Okay, cool. So I think we're live. And then Anderson, do you want to introduce yourself? Not sure if he's with us. Eswar, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey,
Yeah, sure. Okay, I thought Anderson was. So hi everyone. I'm Ishwar. I have recently joined Market Protocol on full-time basis. So yeah, my role here is basically completely into looking over the technical aspects of the development and helping with the architecture and also the product development and the down the line, alongside uh, here and then working with Patrick on the AWS side of things of deployment and stuff. So yeah, that's like kind of what I'm into for market.
So Eswar is our first full-time hire. It's been helping us a ton. We've been offloading an incredible amount of stuff to him in the last few weeks. So he's been swamped and has been making really great contributions to the project. So it's been awesome. And then I just also see that Perfect joined too. Perfect, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm fine. How is everyone doing?
Wonderful, thanks.
Good. So I'll just intro Perfect real quick. He's been helping us since really, really early on also, contributing through Gitcoin on the protocol side with testing, and then on the DApp side recently with a lot of building out of features there and more testing. And then has been helping me get some stuff ready for the new marketing website that should be hopefully live. I hope that we can get it live by the end of this week, and if not Monday is my really goal there. So I think that's everyone on the call, unless someone joined while I was talking. Anderson, do you want to say hello, or you're going to just hang out in the background?
No, it's okay. I'm sorry I wasn't ready to talk, or I wasn't using my phones. So I identify myself as with Robert because I have been working with a software engineer for a long time as well, but I'm relatively new to the blockchain community. So I have been helping with a few projects to start in the community. And well, I'm excited to be being part of your project as well, because it's pretty exciting.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, glad that everyone was able to join today. It's really nice to have more people on the call than we had last week. Anderson's also been working on the community repo and kind of organizing these calls a little bit more, and then getting some structure there so we can make sure that we have notes from the calls published, and so people can go look back at them, as well as probably posting these recorded videos as well, so we have just a record of everything and people can see what we're working on. Is there anything else before I want to talk about before we kind of jump into the agenda? Okay, so the agenda is posted right now on GitHub, and so the idea was that we're going to create an issue each week for the agenda, and people can comment on that issue, and that'll get incorporated. It's kind of a work in progress on the process there. I know we were using Google Docs before, but it's much more accessible if we just use it on GitHub. So see how that works out for everyone. But if you look at issue number 2 on the community repo, it's you should see the agenda for today. So I just want to talk briefly about the DApp and where that's at. Eswar, do you want to actually give that update?
Sure. So yeah, so in the past 1 week, there have been a lot of work progress on the testing, setting up the unit tests, and also a few minor issues with respect to UI responsiveness, and also functionality wise, we've added a gas price field which can kind of directly get the market rate right now, market value right now, what is the gas price recommended for a transaction, and we can directly kind of use the same one instead of hard coding. So apart from that, we've also kind of set up things on AWS, where we kind of AWS S3 bucket for deploying the DApp alongside integrated with the Travis CI for the continuous deployment. Like as soon as we kind of merge a pull request or commit on the master, the automatic deployment kind of takes place. So this is the progress on DApp front. So like in next couple of days, we're planning to kind of do a alpha release for the DApp. So that's the target right now. So there's only one pending thing with respect to the whitelisting of the APIs. So once that is done, like I think we're all set for the alpha release, and we can start making progress for the beta release.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Aswar. Thanks for all your hard work on that too. Yeah, it kind of goes into I'll just give the update quickly on the marketing website because it's a similar status. I think I kind of already talked about it, but we're waiting on a few issues to be resolved that are outstanding from contributors. There's a team page that we'd like to get hammered out so we can get that live. And then Nitin, who's also in Bangalore, who's Aswar's friend, has been mainly the lead on the marketing website, and that's pretty close to done. There's a few really small issues, but my goal is definitely to have that live in the next day or two. We've rolled out new branding across everything, and the website's kind of this old thing that I can't really stand anymore. So I'm very excited to get it to match all the new branding and the new messaging, and so that should happen in the next couple days. Let's see. The only other update I want to talk about briefly is just the contribution resources. I know that Patrick's been working on that as well. I don't know if everyone's looked at Origin Protocols, their docs and their slate setup. So I can post the link in this chat, but I was thinking that we should maybe possibly move some of, let me just put this here and then I can actually speak since I can't type and speak. That we should maybe move some of that information to that docs.marketprotocol.io, just so it's a little bit, cleaner and centralized in terms of finding it across all the different assets and repos. It doesn't mean it can't exist in multiple places, but it might be pretty easy to do that in some of the ways that Patrick set up. So kind of wanted to just talk about that if anyone has any ideas on that being helpful or not helpful. Love to hear them.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to make it accessible in that way. What was set up recently was there's this, as some of you know, there's this meta repo that has the community guidelines contributing guidelines, code standards, and things like that check the boxes for GitHub as far as when you look under Insights community, does this project have all the resources developers need to contribute? And rather than replicate that in all the repos, it's in Meta. And as an experiment yesterday, I created a submodule and shared that into the community repo because that's a good place for it as well. And we can clone that submodule into all the repos so that if anybody goes and just looks at DApp or the site or some sub project in the future, they'll see those same guidelines. We have to replicate the code. Are there other types of? I haven't looked at docs.originprotocol.com, but obviously there's a lot more documentation about the projects above and beyond that we might want to expose through an endpoint like that.
Yeah, I think that there's some benefit to it in maybe both places. Like I just posted the link to where they have their contributing section in their docs. I don't know if there's, I guess we can see how it works out now that you've linked it too. I actually haven't looked at that since I think you just did it last night, but I'll take a look. But I think the docs just provide this nice way of having a lot of information together. And it's possible that there's people that find our website and end up in the technical docs and may be curious about contributing and may find that. So it's all markdown, so it's possible that we can just again use the same sort of format of linking it and then just publish the same content into those docs. So we can maybe look into that. But I stumbled across their Origin Protocols docs, and I saw their contributing section. I thought it was pretty well done. So just something I was kind of kicking around in my head.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm looking at now. They have a lot, pretty extensive documentation about their architecture and different components of their system. So there's things that have yet to been built out in Market Protocol that could go in a place like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So is this? Sorry, go ahead.
No, please jump in.
Yeah, I was just curious. So was this a augmentation of the current docs and moving some of the content out of Meta, namely the contribution guidelines, into the docs, kind of cross-pollinate the information, or was it something different?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was exactly that. Like, definitely Meta, we need that to just kind of anchor all of the repos, I think. But having it in a more public space with the docs, with the Slate docs, I think might be helpful also.
Got it.
Okay, well, I mean, we can definitely just kind of continue that conversation unless anyone else has any other input there on what they want to do with it. Okay, cool. So just want to give a hat tip to Perfect also on, I just got a lot of commits out there this week with testing and then some forms to the new site. So I really just wanted to say thanks for that. I just want to maybe take like a second on each one of these calls and acknowledge some of the major commits that happened that week. So Perfect definitely gets that hat tip for today. And then Nitin also, has not been joining these calls, but he has also done a ton of work this week to get the static site close. And again, I think it's looking pretty good. So I guess the next thing to talk about would be the next major milestones and kind of where we see the project heading and where we need help and assistance and what we're thinking about working on next. So the large things outstanding, I've already talked about the DApp and the marketing site, but beyond that is extending the functionality of the DApp to include the simulated exchange type functionality. So people can not only deploy contracts, but then select those contracts to be able to trade them, use like Rinkeby testnet to allow them to deposit some sort of fake collateral tokens into a wallet, trade those collateral tokens using one of our contracts, and essentially eventually create leaderboards and a competition to kind of gamify beta users in a way to educate them on our protocol. And then of course bug reporting and just kind of taking the protocol through the paces. So that's the large view or vision for the DApp eventually and where we're headed with it. And then the other very large piece of infrastructure that I hope to start thinking about at least the next few weeks is creating an API layer to allow people to interact with the Solidity smart contracts in a simpler fashion. So if you look at zerox.js, their TypeScript API that sits on top of their smart contracts. And so something similar there. And most of the people that we've been speaking with who would be implementing the protocol are already using zerox.js for their implementations. So that's a very good starting spot for us as well. Any questions there or comments? Or I want to be more of a conversation and less of me just talking, so feel free to jump in anywhere.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what that API might look like that simplifies interaction with the protocol. I may need to look at ZeroX, but so there'll be some simpler interfaces and resource representations to interact with the protocol. Yeah, I'd like to hear about that more.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically from what I've looked at of that API layer, it assists in some of the order book functionality that's needed. So in terms of hosting the order book, pruning the order book, keeping it up to date, there's that process. I believe they also have some functions for batch filling orders and assisting in that. And then I haven't looked at it in a little bit, to be honest with you, but there's also I think some just simplification to abstract some of the complexity of having to interact directly with the Solidity smart contracts via Truffle.
Cool.
Phil, do you have a list of what you think might be a good example of one, let's just call it one API call that would kind of sum up exactly what you want to do? Because this level of abstraction is quite interesting. I can see where it would be useful. But if you have like a list of specific functions you think would be a good way to demonstrate this, that might be a place to start.
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely create that. I mean, I think in the next few weeks, as I'm able to shift focus a little bit away from the marketing website and some of the other pressing needs, I'd love to spend some time getting that more specced out and talking through it with some people that want to start organizing that process and working on it. So yeah, I'm happy to kind of create some of that, those endpoints essentially, and what those function calls might look like and what they might provide to someone implementing the protocol. So yeah.
Or even I mean, to mock something up and just return dummy data. And I think, you know, I'm sure that Patrick, excuse me, allergies. Just talking about some of the endpoints, be pretty easy to spin up an API gateway and just return some JSON back to just get a feel for what the data structures also might look like. I'm not sure the architecture on the back end as far as how the server is set up and running on top of AWS. So there's a little bit of gap there, but just conceptually, I was thinking that.
Sure. Yeah. Most of it. Yeah, we can definitely go through all of that. I mean, most of the back end functionality in that is actually going to be the Ethereum blockchain, except for, I mean, some of the order book stuff won't be, because there's some implementation of how they're hosting their order books and how they're storing that data. But yeah, we can definitely do that. I think that'll be helpful in terms of just kind of thinking through the high level architecture and what needs to be in place for this to work.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay, so I think that's mainly it for the next major milestones and kind of where we're headed. I'd love to spend a few minutes. I'm trying to keep these calls relatively short, so just respect for everyone's time. I'd love to spend a few minutes maybe talking about just the process in general. If people feel like there's better ways we can incentivize collaboration, better ways we can onboard contributors from Gitcoin or communicate internally. I know that we've been putting a lot more structure in place and trying to get more organized. So I think that's going well. Like every day I see more structure in our repos and how we're working together. So, but I want to just ask you guys, put that on you and talk about that.
Crickets.
Yeah, totally.
No.
No feedback? Come on. I mean,
It's working perfectly. See?
Perfect. Is there anything that we could help you with? I mean, I know that you've been contributing a lot from the very beginning, and I'm sure, I hope that you feel like we're getting more organized. But I'd love to hear your feedback if you have any on how we can kind of make things better.
There's been a lot of structure actually, and because I've been contributing for a while now, so I think there are some things I might overlook, but yeah, it's getting better, especially with the new automated builds and everything, because it's very easy to get started now, unlike before, where before you get started you needed to run like 1,000,000,001 commands and everything. So And then around contribution to the contribution guidelines and having the rules on not tying down too many too many issues and everything. So yeah, like for me, yeah, there's a lot of progress. I really don't have any issues yet, and I think it's probably because I've been contributing for a while now. So maybe new guys just coming in, maybe they will notice some things. Probably they might have some better questions that you can explain.
Sure. Yeah, that's helpful feedback for sure. I definitely know that we're moving towards all of that, and it was, I just think as our repos get older in age, they get better. I mean, kind of the marketing website's a little bit of a fire drill right now, and so there's not automated testing set up, there's not Trappist set up yet. But I think as soon as we get,
I think someone's working on that.
Sorry, say that again.
No, someone's already working on all those, right?
Yeah, it's all in progress.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and also, is Perfect? Was it your birthday yesterday or 2 days ago? Perfect.
It was 2 days ago.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay, cool. Let's see what else is on the agenda. Sorry, I just got locked out of my other machine. Is there any more comments there on kind of contributing and process and communication that anyone wants to bring up?
I've seen that you have this topic on contribution for since the first meeting, right? Maybe you could ask people who contributed one time or something, why they are not coming back, right? Or what they are seeing that they could have, what they need when they start. Because as Perfect mentioned, he's from the beginning, so he already knows everything, how it works. But maybe someone from the beginning would say, it's harder for me to start to do something without X or Z. And then you could focus on those things.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Are you going to put that in the notes and create an issue so we can?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I want to make sure that obviously that's the whole point, right? Is that we make sure that we convert these calls into action items and into actual change. So I think that's a great suggestion. Is asking people that are contributing for the first time. Just in the last week, we've had probably, I would say 4 or 5 people that have contributed for the first time. So we have a very ripe crowd to ask those questions to. So I think that's a great idea. Okay, so yeah, I think that's it from that for that act or from that item. I had some other things to talk about with static routes to assets with the website, but I've kind of got that resolved, at least for the time being. It may not be a perfect solution, but it definitely is working. But yeah, there's nothing else that's on my agenda to talk about. Is there anything that people want to bring up that wasn't on the agenda?
Yeah, Phil. So I have one thing. So this is regarding the GitHub projects, the way we kind of use. So right now there is no single place where we can kind of view all the issues that are the progress of all the issues across all the repos. So I think it's time we kind of set few rules over there and kind of make sure that we kind of follow.
I love it. So are you suggesting using the project board in GitHub or something separate?
Yeah. So Patrick had set up for the market protocol, the project, this thing. So, and after that, I kind of set up multiple projects inside each and every repo. So that's what we kind of have to figure out what is to use and how can we have higher level project and also sub projects, and so that everyone can kind of see the progress across all the repos that have been there, and also it will be easier for us to kind of track where what issue is in which state, and also if there is any issue stuck for a long time in a particular state. So these kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. So partly that's on me. I haven't been doing a good job. So when we're creating issues, the goal there is to assign it to a milestone and a part of the project. Is that the like what needs to happen right now to make that more effective? I mean, I'm part of the problem for sure, so I'll own that. But I'd love to hear more about like how to make that project board more useful for everyone.
Sure. So I have been doing that for DApp issues at least, but like I'm not sure how we can get the similar thing done across all the repos. Maybe Patrick has some ideas, or anyone else who has experience with GitHub projects can kind of help us into that.
Well, if we, the advantage of the project board at the root of Market Protocol is that you can search issues across all the repos and organize them into what's in progress, what's done, and so forth. So that gives visibility across everything, and there's the opportunity to open new cards there that represent general things that we want to work on that aren't necessarily marked by a concrete issue in any of the sub-projects. It's just a matter of everyone, I think, kind of looking to that particular project, because we can have it at the repo level, and we also have it at the project level. And if we try to do both, then it's a little bit confusing as to where we find them. So I propose doing that at the Market Protocol top level, root level. Maybe that'll evolve over time. If in the future there's one particular repo where all of the work is happening, we can focus on technical issues for that project in its own project. But at this point, since we're talking about a lot of things that span all the repos and their Market Protocol in general, I propose using the top level, but open to other ideas.
Yeah.
Do you guys?
So like I've been thinking kind of in the. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say like, it makes sense to kind of use the root level for like every issue we kind of create, let it automatically get added to the Market Protocol project. We can kind of set that up. And also like, I'm already using, at least for DApp, its own project board to keep track of the issues which are feature related. So we can kind of use both, but it definitely like, we should start using the root level for all the issues across all the repos. So that's what I've been like kind of thinking.
Do you guys think it's just a matter of process, or because there's some tools that you can overlay on top of GitHub that can make it a little bit clearer in the way of stack ranking and priorities, and maybe a few other fields to give you a better idea of what work is there to complete and how do I know I'm completed. So just throwing that out there, it just might be, hey, let's just update this a little bit better than we have and work at a higher level. Or there's, a next level that you could always move to. Don't want to introduce process where it's not needed.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, if you just use the GitHub tools, like I'm looking at the top level project right now, it gives a nice view of what's done, what's upcoming, what's in progress. But yeah, there's some information that's lacking, like if something's in progress, who's working on it, and specifically you see who opened the issue, but there's not a lot of detail there. So maybe are there some specific tools that you've used that layer that on top, or is it?
Yeah, and because it's just, I think as the project grows and the community grows and you're trying to get more and more people in, it's the time to first commit, right? That you always want to look at, and how do you make it as easy as possible for someone to do that? So just jumping into a central place, and things like Waffle and GitLab that you could, we could take a look at to see whether or not it's like, hey, let's set this up and see what it looks like and see if it's useful for everybody in the community. So just throwing that out there. I don't know if you guys have any experience with those tools or have used other ones.
I have some experience with them, but just to share a thought, I strongly believe that we need first to define a process, and then go to define a tool. because any tool just is there just to support a process, not the other way around, right? You can have the better tool, but if you don't have the process, it won't work. So I think you can start with the tool you have today, just defining what's the process better, and then thinking on changing the tool if necessary, because you can do a lot of things here actually. And I'm not sure if I got the question right, but you already have all the repos there, right? In that board.
Of course,
Yeah.
you asked if we had other repos there.
You already have all the repos there, right? You can
Yeah.
see all the repos in that board.
Yep. In
So
the
I
main,
didn't get. Okay.
yeah, just agreeing.
I didn't get I didn't get the initial problem then.
Yeah, so the problem is basically like we do have a root level project that is created, but there can be sub-level repo, each individual repo level projects also to keep track of the features, issues related to features, etc. So that's what it majorly comes around, like what process do we want to follow. So I think that's what we have to kind of figure out and then kind of use the tools accordingly.
Yeah, I think you should define a process first with this tool, okay, and then see what points the tool doesn't support the process well, and then start thinking which tool could be better.
Yeah, I kind of like that approach also, because I think it's partly, I mean, right now I haven't been doing a good job of using that tool personally. And so I think if we all adopt that process, and I'm mainly seeing myself adopt that process also, that'll help. And then we can, again, do what Anderson's saying, kind of see if there's things lacking. So maybe we just try to see if the GitHub project board, the root level project board is sufficient. And then if not, go to other tools if we find it lacking once we're actually using that successfully. That seems to make sense to me.
Yes, let me throw out a couple of situations. So what I quickly see happening is that, so there's a DApp, there are the Solidity contracts, there is now an API, there'll be more UI, and as you're moving the project forward and more people get involved, is that these features cut across multiple repos. And so having that holistic view on, hey, we want to do this specific steel thread through these different projects requires a lot of coordination between the different repos and potentially between multiple people working on individuals, let's say stories or tasks to be accomplished inside of that. So you quickly get to a point where you outgrow the individual needs that you have, at least in the baked in tool. So that's just something to think about. And then secondly is that, when you talk about process, the feeling is that, do you want to move to or just stay where you're at in the way of, is it a continuous flow process, or is it something that you want to time box the work to be done? And time box is a little bit difficult because when you have volunteers and contributors, it's hard to stick to certain time frames. So it looks like right now, at least, you're in more of a continuous flow, which is fine. I mean, you got to pick what you got and move forward with it. But there's also ways to cull that and make it a little bit more systematic as well, with some, like you're saying, Anderson, with a little bit more process, like, hey, what do we want to do? So I'm just kind of curious to see, well, okay, what is it? Just simply having Phil update the boards a little bit more often to make sure it's a little clearer, or is it something different?
Go ahead, Anderson.
I'm sorry, the question, I didn't, do you mean for me, a question?
Yeah, because you talked about let's define the process. It's like, okay, great. Let's define the process. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer because I don't know how you are working today, to be honest. I'm seeing, but I just, what I said is, before thinking on moving to a bigger tool or something like that is usually way better to define a process, even because if you go to a bigger tool, let's say a more complex tool, or especially if you go to multiple projects at the same time, you need a process as well. Actually, an even more complex process, because any tool is just supporting a process, in my opinion. The tool itself doesn't make anything. You can have a tool of, for example, let's say we start using Jira, and Jira is already prepared to do continuous deployment. But we ourselves, if you don't know how to do that, the tool doesn't make anything by itself. So you need to understand how the process works. And I was recently talking to a few friends, and we discussed something which we can do continuous deployment using Post-its, It's just, you don't need any tool. It's just a matter of knowing how to do it, and everyone agree on that, and then have a lot of coordination, of course. And that's where the tool helps, having the coordination. I don't know exactly here where the problem is, and the guys, Perfect and Zara, certainly probably know better than I do, because they are working the day-to-day with the tool, but I don't know exactly where it is, where we need to improve here.
So
I could try to, if it's okay for a few, I could try to talk with Zara and Perfect then and try to have some insights or something.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy for people to take conversations offline from this call, especially, I'd like to try to maybe wrap this up in the next 5 minutes, just in respect for everyone's time here. I don't know that we'll resolve this discussion now fully. It's obviously a much larger discussion. From my perspective, I think that if we can kind of, to the point that Anderson's making, that if we can try to integrate the GitHub projects fully and see where the deficiencies lie, I think that's probably a good place to start with it. From my perspective, at least. Especially because there's already some time that's gone into setting it up. And that, there's definitely some cost to setting up all of these different tools and management processes.
And besides the costs, it's usual people puts a lot of expectation in a new tool, right? Oh, now you put a new tool, it's bigger and it's awesome, and doesn't change anything actually.
Right.
Because it's not a tool, right?
Right. I mean, we're struggling with that same thing on the business side of things with Asana. We're all trying to get better processes in place, and we're using Asana for that. And the tool's great. It's the deficiencies lie in us using that tool. So we're actively trying to do a better job of that.
Hey, Phil, it's Collins here. Sorry to jump in, but actually, hey, Robert, nice to have you join.
Hey, Collins.
Something you said the other day when we first met, I thought was really interesting, and maybe you could just pipe in here real quick. I know Phil wants to wrap this up, but you talked about kind of retraining people for a new process when you and I were chatting at the conference the other day.
Yeah.
And that's something that's kind of been stuck on my mind, because I know on the, at least from where Phil and I came, we didn't have that process in place. And there truly is a retraining that needs to happen, even at the top level, as Phil's mentioned several times, with Phil, Seth, and I, to do that. So I don't know, that's just kind of something I've been thinking about too. I don't know if that's helpful for you guys. Maybe it's more of a Phil, Seth, and I thing to start with. But anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting, and I know I don't have a ton to value to add here, but I just wanted to bring that idea up since you mentioned it.
Yeah, and I don't want to have too much time on that topic, but there is a as Phil and I were talking last night, is that process can introduce a lot of friction. And so you want to be careful not to introduce too much, but at the same time is that there are some obvious gaps, right? And that need to be filled. And so you got to figure out when and where to input those at the same time as that. And that's pretty much at the implementation level. But then from just purely a business process perspective and how things get done and how they're prioritized and such, there is a three-way conversation that you guys need to happen to figure out how are we going to take the why and convert it into, okay, this is what needs to be done, and then the how, right? Those are three levels you always need to work at. And so there's a bit of work to be done at each of those. But the good news is that there's a ton of best practices out there that Anderson doesn't introduce a lot of process, and tools absolutely do support what you're trying to work on. And you need to utilize what you need to utilize at the time you need to utilize it, and then grow with it. So trust me, I'm not suggesting any sort of large enterprise scale type of process. It's just simply, hey, let's make the work a little bit clearer. Let's figure out when the work is completed and you check it in. What's the process for reviewing the work? How does it get built? Where's the artifact go? How does it get deployed? right? And you step into that. That's not you do everything all at the same time, right? You take a step at a time, and then you build a working agreement, which I think, Anderson, what you're suggesting, that you talk with a group of people to say, hey, how do we plan to work together with each other? What are the rules and guidelines that we're going to follow, so we know that when we bring a new community member on, that they have a place to go to say, oh, here's the working agreement of the group, and I know that I can't, for example, I know I can't accept my own pull requests. I need to have it reviewed by another member of the team. So I'm just throwing that out as an example. And there's a lot more behind that as well.
Guys, I want to try to wrap the call up here. So I just want to thank everyone for their time. I think there's a lot of good discussion here. I think the idea of implementing more processes is something that's going to span a few calls. So hopefully we can take the notes that Anderson's using from this and make sure to turn them into action items for next week's call. And I think there's also some conversations that can happen without the full team here too on some of this stuff to make it more efficient. So my goal on these calls is to get more people to join, and I think if we keep them to roughly 45 minutes, that'll be easier for people to commit to. So unless there's anything else that people want to bring up, I'd like to just thank everyone for joining us this morning, and we'll make sure to follow up on the action items from the call. Cool. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
See you guys.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.